So welcome to Family Meal. Today we are honored to have you, Nancy, as our guest. Nancy is the Executive Director and founder of Wellness in the Schools, a national nonprofit with a vision to ensure access to nourishing food and active play in public schools. Nancy has led the growth of WITS into an organization that has cooked over 50 million school meals and led more than 85,000 hours of active play. She's a regular commentator and speaker on school food and child wellness. Nancy was honored by First Lady Michelle Obama at the Chefs Move to Schools, named a Food Revolution hero by acclaimed chef activist Jamie Oliver, and recognized by Ann Cooper, the renegade lunch lady, for her dedication to school lunch reform.
Thank you. That was good. Well read.
So I just really like to start off with a couple of questions. And could you first start by telling us about the organization that you co-founded and its focus on improving school food and wellness and education?
Sure. So I started, as you said, Wellness in the Schools 20 years ago. This is our 20th anniversary.
Wow.
And I started this really because I saw firsthand the impact of poor diet and lack of physical activity on children's ability to learn. I come to the work as an educator. I was a teacher and then a school leader on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And kids came into school with a bag of chips and a bottle of soda, and that was their breakfast. It's pretty much what they could afford with their dollar at the deli, right? Because we all know that cheap food is, or the least expensive food is also the junkiest food, right? So that was their breakfast. Their lunch was then an overly processed school meal that was funded by our federal government, and then recess was a pretty sedentary time of day. So as I said, I saw they couldn't walk a flight of stairs without having to stop to catch their breath. They couldn't focus in class, and children really couldn't learn. And this was the early 90s, and no one was really talking about what we then called the childhood obesity epidemic, which we now talk, we use chronic illness. No one was really talking about that, but again, I was sort of seeing it for myself and wanted to do something about it. So Wellness in the Schools is now, we started in one school in Manhattan, and we are now working in 5 states across the country. We have 100 chefs and fitness coaches who work in schools. And essentially, as you said, we want to ensure access to nourishing food and active play for children in public schools. And we do that through a multitude of programming, but essentially chefs work in kitchens and coaches working on recess yards and in classrooms.
Yeah, I think it's really inspiring, and especially like founding something as I know is like getting off the ground is like so incredibly challenging. Definitely. I always try to remind my staff that I drove a truck around and I picked stuff up and that's how it actually started.
Yeah.
What did you do?
Wow.
What was the first couple of steps, actionable steps?
It's funny. We were talking earlier, and I'll tell this story. It's so true, and gosh, and truly, I always say that I started Wellness in the Schools with 99% naivete. I'm like, this is a problem, I gotta fix it, and I'm gonna fix it.
Yeah.
Now, if I tried to fix every problem, I'd be really in trouble. So I've got the blinders on now, particularly now I have the blinders on.
Yeah.
But one story, so this story, I was gonna practice. I was talking earlier about my 3-year-old, my daughter's school. So I was working at a school, it was the Ella Baker School, and 68th Street in Manhattan. It was this amazing, I don't know if it was an amazing complex. It was, I think it was at the Gateses back when they had these community schools, and it was funded, I think, by Gates. And there were several high schools, and there were a middle school, and then we were the elementary school, and it was from babies up until 8th grade. So essentially you could go to the school from birth until high school. And it was, the babies were not to encourage children to have babies, but if high school kids would have children, they could go to school. So it was really this amazing center, and I had a baby, and so my 3-year-old daughter was in this class, so we went from babies to 3-year-olds and then 4-year-olds. I said, well, we have to change this lunch. I'm gonna fix school meals, and this class of 16 kids, mind you, there are 1 million children in New York City that eat school lunch. So I started to tell you earlier, we had a couple restaurants delivering us food on the budget of school meals, which is like a little under $1.
Yeah.
A little under $4 when you count the staff, but the food itself. So they did it on I think it was like $1.26 I asked if they could do per child. And we sort of raised money from the class. And then the other 3 days, I had volunteer chefs coming into the school. There was like a makeshift kitchen to prepare the meals for the kids.
Oh, wow.
And it was amazing. We would go to the cafeteria to get piece of fruit and if they wanted the milk, and then they would come down and eat our meals. But what would happen, which was great for the chefs, the volunteer chefs would get jobs, but it was not good for me because then I was stuck trying to find another volunteer. So this is what I was doing for this year. And then I found myself in March, 8.5 months pregnant with my next child when the next chef left. And I was in this kitchen, I could barely fit in the kitchen, making these meals for the kids. And here I are talking about not processed, but I stored like homemade baked chicken fingers, and I had frozen broccoli and whatever. I stored it in the freezer for when I went on maternity leave so that I could finish the rest of the year. Yeah. So that's my do-it-yourself story.
Yeah, see.
I'd forgotten about that. That wasn't in my notes.
So you hustled. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you do. You have to do it.
How did you find the chefs in the beginning?
So for this particular project, I just knew, and I'm trying to figure out how I knew them, but I knew, I'm forgetting the names, Mickey and her sister, they owned Slice Pizza. And again, it's not there anymore. Neither of these two restaurants are here. This was literally 21 years ago, 18 years ago, because my daughter is now 22. But it was like the first pizza joint that did whole wheat crust and tomato sauce that was full of vegetables, and they had different types of cheese. You could do soy cheese, remember, back then, and you could do regular mozzarella cheese. So they were awesome, and they were sort of forward thinking. They're on to some other project now. I'm forgetting their names. I'm sorry, but so I knew them from the space. They're in in the food space. And then Candle Cafe was like the one vegan restaurant in New York City, and Joy and Bart, the owners, and they were amazing. And they just, I think friends used to go there, and so we asked, and they helped us out. She was on my board early on. Nice. So we just, the restaurant world, as you know, is amazing, and they came, flocking to help.
I know, they always do.
Yeah, there's you're a giving culture, and so this is how they could give.
No, totally. And I was just talking to somebody in the state today about, how we have to appreciate them. During COVID, we wouldn't. We would have been in such a horrible place. These were the businesses getting hurt most, handing out everything they owned.
Exactly.
Asking for nothing in return.
And I realize now, because we try to be less ask for less, but they gave so much of themselves and of their food.
Yeah.
I would just ask, and they said yes. So I kept asking, and I kept saying yes.
Yeah.
And Bill Telepan was sort of our first big celebrity chef, or local celebrity chef, and he was amazing. I mean, literally. He said, I often say, he asked the 4 words, how can I help? And I basically put him to work. Yeah. And he literally had 2 jobs. And I would call him, he knew we could talk we work our day jobs, and then he was in the restaurant at night. So that's when we could call him and get the work done. But such a giving community.
Yeah, totally. And they, get a bad rap sometimes, but they're the best people. Yeah. I totally agree. This was a really good question that I thought about was, how has your understanding of the connection between nutrition, education, and community health evolved over the years?
Well, I sort of feel like I grew up understanding nutrition and education and sort of the interconnection of the two, and community health. And I give credit all to my mom, who's still with us and amazing. But really she. Our neighbors, our friends called her Nature Lady, or Nature for short, because in the 70s, when women were going into the workforce, we needed to make it easier for them to prepare meals. They were mostly the ones preparing meals at home, right? But my mother was sort of steadfast to be sort of the old school Nature Lady, and she just always cooked healthy for us. And we were all part of I was raised in Miami, I think I said, and Key Biscayne, and we sort of running around and playing outside was the norm. So we did. We ran around and played, and it was safe. And we were part of the athletic club, and the athletic club did an annual sale of candy. And she decided, and again, she didn't lecture us or preach to us, but she just did things. And she decided that they shouldn't sell candy, they should sell citrus. She has some family, some great uncle up in northern Florida who had an orange or grove or a grapefruit grove, and so she got the citrus from him, and we put it in our carport, and she was selling it instead of candy. Of course, you're in Florida, there's an open carport. By the time we got to the back, it was all rotten. But that's why they sold candy, probably, because you could store it forever. Yeah. But so I sort of was raised this way, and she also, at the sporting events, they had those. Do you remember those? They probably still have them, the hot dogs and the boiling machine. Yeah. So she's like, that's gross. I'll bring my grill. And so she grilled them at the field,
Oh my God.
And so she's like, the sales quadrupled. Yeah. So she just was about good food and healthy food. So I saw all of that naturally, and I forgot your question. But I I feel like it's sort of seeing the contrast when I got older and was running a school and saw kids with, Cheetos and orange soda and then orange fingers for the whole day, for lunch. It's like something's wrong with this. Like I know that this is not the right way.
Yeah.
So how it's evolved, just now understanding, and I will say this, I will admit that I think early on I was like, this is a person's choice and it's their fault. I don't think I felt that way for very long, so to be fair.
Yeah.
Realizing now, I think the evolution is, and I realized this a while ago, not just today, we have our system is broken.
For sure.
This is a systemic problem, and I have really naturally, my inclination is to always work from the system, but now I'm like, oh, that's a real thing, and just going back to from where I grew up in a very diverse city, but very segregated city, right? And seeing what I now know as, redlining and social determinants of health, which, I didn't know those terms when I was 13, but I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw race riots. I'm over water skiing and I could see, homes burning down of my track teammates, and I didn't quite understand it at 13, but now I guess that's my evolution.
Yeah.
Seeing these disparities, understanding health, understanding education, and then now kind of putting it all together is really seeing it as a systems problem.
Yeah, no, that's it. No, that's...
Just crafted that right now.
Yeah. No, I really understand that journey. I mean, my perspectives were so different in the beginning, and I was like, well, people just eat the leftover stuff. And then over time, it's access. And, like, what do you see as the unique power of the classroom to promote access and wellness?
So the way sort of the cooking program works is that we work with districts at large. So I often talk about us being sort of top down and bottom up. Top down, we work with the districts to rewrite the menus, and they sort of contract us or engage us, but we write the menus so that they are all scratch cooked, plant forward, and culturally inclusive. So we teach children the same recipe. So last year they made jollof cauliflower in their classroom. They made apple pico de gallo. They made a pineapple fried rice or pineapple rice medley because you don't use fried in school meals. So they make the same recipes that are in their cafeteria, and we do a whole nutrition lesson around that. And they say, my God, this is delicious. And I say, guess what? It's on your menu tomorrow. Oh. So it's not only or next week or next Friday, it's not only our best sort of marketing tool, but it's an incredible education. And we do these seasonal classes, so they each will have them 3 times a year. And the lessons definitely go home. We see the same kids year after year, so we really get to hear about the impact. So that's just one example. There's so much that I think should be happening in school classrooms that is not happening. And it's, again, not an individual fault, not a principal's fault, not a teacher's fault, but it's really about what are we prioritizing as a country, outside of school, right? What are we prioritizing, and then what are we prioritizing in schools, and what are the requirements? And you often hear, sorry, I can't do that because I've got to study I got to have test prep then. I'm like, if you only understood that if your child was healthy, if your child were running around, and if your child were eating healthy, he or she will do better on that test. Yeah. And it's just, it's hard. Yeah. It's what I say, we're against the norm still. 20 years ago it was crazy. Yeah. Now I'm less crazy, but it's still really against the norm.
Yeah. We argue that if restaurants receive more money to make healthy meals, you spend less money on Medicaid. Yep.
Thank you. I want to get the dollars around that. I really do. I think it's time to really, really show that. I mean, we spend $250 billion a year on chronic illness, right? Yeah. And the industry that is growing the largest in our country is the healthcare industry. Yeah.
But I want to keep pulling on that thread though. Like, what are 1 or 2 policy things that you could change?
20 years ago, I hated policy. To your point, I like to see change tomorrow. Yeah. And I'm on the ground. I'm making the food. The kids are eating the food. I hated policy. Yeah. I want to be fair to all my policy friends. The 40 under 40 in food policy. Yeah. That it's a good thing. And when you're doing this for so long, you can start to see some change. So sort of the 3 big ones. First, going back to what's funded, the Farm Bill. So what are what is it? $25 billion a year on those 3 crops. Yeah. If you supported local farms, organic or not, at the same price. Look, where are our values here? Is our values in big ag and those 3 crops, or our values in local farmers to make food to nourish us? So that's because the 3 crops are not nourishing us; they're nourishing cars. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the big one. If that doesn't change, the rest, again, policy sucks. So we don't have a prayer anywhere else. And then I think in terms of food, healthy school meals for all, universal. So I don't know if folks are familiar with that, but there are only now 8 because New York State is a universal free meals, healthy meals for all, I don't know what it's called anymore, where all children can eat for free regardless of your income. And there's, I don't know if you remember as children or if you have children, but there's this sort of clunky process where you have to apply and you have to give your poverty, you have to give your income, and then your income changes, and then you don't get a free lunch. It's just so clunky and so uncomfortable and so stigmatizing, frankly, for children.
For sure, yeah.
So getting rid of that and giving universal free meals, to kids all around the country, I think is needed. And then I like to advocate for universal, but I don't like to advocate it without advocating for more money for the meals. So we got 6 more cents back in 2010 for school meals, which went up to maybe a little over $1. So you need more money to be able to purchase better food. It's true. People, it is quote unquote elitist good food because it's more expensive because of all these reasons. Again,
yeah.
So the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act is what provides funding for WIC for school meals, and so I think that also needs to be reauthorized and more money needs to be given to school meals.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
What is the per diem per kid?
It's around the $1 mark,
About
and then again just under $4 for if you count staff and equipment and everything else.
Very
So go ask anyone to go buy a meal for $4. Well, that's why my kids came with the bottle of soda and the bag of chips from the deli, because their parents gave them the $1.50. It was in their pocket, and that's what they got for breakfast.
Yeah, no, totally.
And that's all they can afford.
Yeah. We produce meals at about 5, and it's incredibly challenging.
Wow, good for you. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's
with including staff.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
And delivery.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I should have known that. Wow.
The all-in
Very
costs,
impressive.
Yeah, but it's because
Congrats. That's amazing.
It's because of scale. It's because of scale and group purchasing and stuff. What we've been trying to figure out is how do we, at a certain scale, we'll be able to buy from farms. We'll be we'll take all of the broccoli. We'll take all of whatever you have.
There are Minneapolis School District, Bertram Weber. He meets, and he's in Minneapolis, one of the coldest states in the country. He meets with his farms in December to plan. They grow for him for his meals in September.
Oh, wow.
It's values-based procurement, and that's what our value is dollars. I mean, right? And he's doing amazing work.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. How do you see? Oh, this is a real good. What do you see the role of public-private partnerships in all of this, especially for shaping the future of school food and food policy?
Yeah, I think we touched on this a bit. Honestly, I think it's the only way to shape food policy and school meals, and frankly everything. You need these policies in place. I didn't used to like them, but I do like them. You need them in place, but then you also need people like you and me, and many others, many others, who have. I often say we have the luxury to think outside the box, right? School districts, schools are run by huge bureaucracies, and they can get stuck. So we have the luxury to think differently, to push, and to sort of remain steadfast. And what our mission is, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes their mission is just to feed kids. You got to get the food on the plate. And you got to do it by a certain cost, which is real and true. And again, not blaming and shaming, but we can say, and the kids have to like it. These kids have to eat. I'm like, we're the adults here, right? Yeah. We make kids read the Iliad and the Odyssey. No offense, but to the dead men who wrote those books. But but we also should. I don't want to make them eat food, but we should be providing food that is nutritious and delicious and nourishing for them to get through their day.
Yeah.
And they say, I don't like it, I want to eat my Takis. I mean, really? That's not going to get you through your day. So we have to be the adults here at some point. I can be that person. I can be that annoying person as a nonprofit.
Yes.
I don't have to worry about bottom line, and I don't have to worry about, the safety and my staff. I mean, I do, I'm concerned about it, but I think and I don't mean just me, I think that's the power of public-private partnerships.
Yeah.
And I do kind of lift us up. I'm in my boldness trying to be really that example of a great public-private partner in terms of working in school meals.
As a lifelong athlete, how has access to movement shaped your life and work? What is one unexpected way that nutrition and movement combine to promote wellness?
Well, thank you for that question, Matt. I really appreciate it. And as you know, Wellness in the Schools looks at both sides of the coin in terms of addressing chronic illness. We look at both food and fitness. And as I was saying to someone earlier, the irony is because food gets so much attention, my background is actually more in sports. I was a as I said, as a young child, I really loved doing sports, and I went to college. I was what they call a 3-sport athlete. A little bit of a cheat because I did fall soccer, winter track, and spring track. So that's how you got the 3-sport. And just have been, yes, a lifelong athlete, and I feel a little bit one-dimensional. But I really, for me personally, it's my happy pill. It keeps me going. And so I was trying to think about the one maybe not known outcome of both is I was going to say mood, because everyone knows that you get stronger and all that, but there is some research around mood and movement, and we've all heard of the term hangry, like if you don't eat, and if food insecure child gets hangry, but I think the opposite is true too. When you're well fed and when you move regularly, your mood it's impacting your mood, and I think your energy and just your daily outlook on life.
All right. I wonder if there's any questions.
Nancy, thank you for coming and sharing with us, but not just us, our community online.
Thank you for having me.
I want to unpack that ratio you spoke of like twice in this conversation about the total cost of a unit of meal for an educational space. $1 for food, and then that disproportionate ratio of $3 for labor and all the other things. When you look at traditional food costs and labor costs and the variable costs of F&B operations, is typically equal. 30% food, 30% food, and then the balance is like your margin on top. What can you just unpack that ratio and how it exists in the space?
It's interesting because, again, what did I say earlier about the meals that cost the least are the meals that are the least healthy. So we are using a lot of processed food in schools. It's just true. It's because they're cheap and because they don't have a lot of money. So I don't know if that's what you're pointing at. I think we need more money for this food, and I'm not sure why the cost is so much in terms of personnel. They're not getting paid a lot, but there's equipment, there's the buildings, there's a lot more. I think it's probably just because food is so cheap, unfortunately, because again we know it's being subsidized, and also you can get commodity food, which is essentially free food, but I don't like to look at it as free. I like to look at it as you have a gift card. So a gift card still costs money. You can get a gift card and buy and get food from farms, from U.S. farms.
Milk, that's why all schools have milk, is that?
Yes, milk can be in that. It can be really anything. Quick history on school meals, which I think probably you all know. It was during the Great Depression when farms had nowhere to sell their food and kids were hungry. So this great idea of let's take the excess farm food and give it to schools. So that was amazing. And then it didn't really become a policy until the 1940s when we were going into war and we needed kids to be able to fight, and we were unhealthy. We were too skinny, basically is what they were saying. So we got to feed these kids. So we started the National School Lunch Program in 1941 or 42. And that is, so the history explains sort of why we still have excess farm food that can go to schools. Sometimes we'd like to get the fruits and vegetables. We're getting a lot of other stuff.
Is there any other questions?
I have a lot of respect for the work that you do now, and I think it's absolutely incredible, but I'm particularly interested about the lessons you learned as a teacher when it comes to sustaining a lifelong curiosity and impact of education for these students. How have you brought those lessons from being an educator into the way that you do work now?
Good question, Patrice. I mean, I actually think what I learned, mostly what I learned is I was worried about our youth, and I think that's what I took from my experience as an educator, really seeing, going back to, I think I said when I was younger and started a school, and we'd take kids out on hikes on the weekends, we were like these young kids without kids of our own, and these middle school kids could not keep up with us, and I thought it was supposed to be the other way around, like the kids were supposed to be running ahead of the adults. So I saw that, and I think when I was working at this middle school, I created a course, I don't want to take all the credit because it was with someone else, that was called Who is Food? And we talked about sort of who was behind all this food they're eating on the table. And we're New York City kids, they had no idea. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, something is wrong with this picture. So I think what I mostly learned from my years of being a teacher and a school leader was what was missing and how I wanted to sort of fill that gap. But also, I think our education programming, and I'm sort of really proud of it, and I know I drive my team crazy if I'm sort of steadfast with it, is not about, it's not dictatorial. It's really coming from the children. So we have these cooking classes where there's always a feature of, the featured produce of the season, and kids are making something, and there's a lesson plan. I'm not saying we just make it up as we go along, but it's really about what are the kids bringing to you, what is their curiosity, and how are you using that as a literacy moment, as a teachable moment. And even if you have to stray from this lesson plan, because we all know we learn more, you're going to remember the answers when the question comes from you. They may not forget it because you asked it, right? And so really having the kids teach each other. Oh, what did Patrice say? Chris, can you answer what she said? And then can you add to that? And you want more of that as opposed to the teacher, the chef standing up at the front of the classroom pouring the knowledge. I know everything, I know everything. When you bring that knowledge, you're going to know a little something about an apple. When you bring that knowledge, you're going to build on that knowledge better. So that's my education philosophy is very progressive education, and I don't know if I explained that very well, but that's what I learned from my years of educating. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Yay!
you.
Thank you guys. Thank you all for being here.